This is a morning show here on Signature TV, and it's 9:31 on a fine Friday. How do you do? Hope you're prepared for the weekend. After all, it's a weekend that would give you the opportunity to have another extra day to stay at home because it's a public holiday today and Monday. Happy Easter, everyone. All right, so we're going to be talking a little bit about low income and the vulnerable in our society. I'm talking about children, education for children from low income groups and community. How can we do that? How can we assist in getting some of our best education to the low income and the vulnerable in our system? We have with us via Zoom this morning Esther Alaribe. She's a programs manager, Bethesda Child Support Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much for having me. And yes, happy Easter. I mean, it's the season. Thank you very much for having me.
Happy Easter to you, Esther. All right.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, you can't really have the best of education without monies. Yeah, it's just not possible, almost impossible. But then we know there are people who still find a way around education with the way and manner that they go about it. I'm asking because, again, our country, we are a country of poor people. By the last statistics, we're hearing over 150 million Nigerians who are multidimensionally poor. So, but then how do we get around helping? How do we get around educating the young ones who are from a low income society or low income sphere?
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much for having me, Signature TV. So, when we get to talk about children from low-income homes, out-of-school children, I like to look at it from a standpoint of multidimensional poverty because, first off, there are a lot of families whereby they cannot even afford their day-to-day feeding. And we know, like, feeding is like very basic, housing is basic as well. Some of these people rather have their little investment go into feeding, go into every day-to-day things than spend that money on education. Now, having to talk about education, I like the fact that a lot of us as adults these days are beginning to see, we've always known what the importance of quality education has been. But in recent times, having to now see people who sometimes come across as being learned, having some kind of ideologies as to what should be and what should not be, you're like, maybe I'm really glad for the kind of quality education that I got. Now, narrowing it down to children from low income groups, low income homes and communities. I like to always use the work that we do at Bethesda Child Support Foundation as a model. We run a free tuition school in Lagos, Ogun State, Cross River, and Akwa Ibom State. We get to ensure that we get donors and sponsors who get to deliberately commit to sending these children from low-income homes to school. You have cases where you see an 8-year-old who's never been to school ever before, cannot even write their own name. And when you come in contact with these children, you just look at how life has been unfair to them. We get to look back at our own country. We get to look at ourselves as a people. How much of investment are we intentionally making sure that we get to give to children in this category? Every now and then we get to look at the different dailies, we look at the different reports as to how many children we have out of school in Nigeria. These are not just numbers. They are statistics into the lives of people who can be made or be mad by what we are not doing rightly in the country. And for us as Nigerians, there's a whole lot that goes into it. Is it that we're talking about poor infrastructure as the state, or we're having to talk about the limited access to education, or we're talking about the wide divide between who has what and who doesn't have what? And right now, I don't think there is anything middle class anymore in Nigeria, because it's either you're there or you're here. And people just have children. People have children for different reasons. But the fact that we have had these children here, it's more important that we get to give them what is due. I mean, these are very basic things. You get to look at what the Child Rights Act says and what children should actually have and ensure that every child is educated. I mean, basic education. So if you're able to give a child a platform that says primary and secondary education is free, what you choose to do with your life, with what has been instilled in you, going afterwards, it's in your hands. But at least the basic things we should be able to give them. I get to commend some states who have found way to intentionally ensure that at least primary and secondary school are covered for free. You don't have to pay. But where we still get to say you don't have to pay, there's some things you still get to pay for. You get to buy books and all of that. So it is a whole lot, and there's so much to unpack because really the poverty in the country, again, multi-dimensional poverty. The way it affects me is not the same way it affects you. And it's entirely different from the person who is on the streets who probably has 5 children without having a blueprint of how to go about raising the children or giving them quality education. And it gets to show in the kind of people that we are as a country, as a nation. We are at a very critical point where we need to have people coming in with brilliant ideas, innovation, and models. But if the foundation is faulty, what can we work on? What can we actually do, really? I'll let you take it up from here.
Right. I mean, I like that you said that your institution is doing so well in that regard. I really do love it. But again, I'm wondering how many of you or your institution that is across board, do you think they are going fast enough in covering the inequality that exists in this poverty strain? So how much can individuals contribute? How can they even be part of it? In what ways can government assist in this regard? I mean, poverty in some ways, is not just even about monies, because again, if somebody pays your school fees and you go to school and you go back home, you're not sure what you're going to eat. I'm not sure you're going to concentrate so much in the study, because again,
Definitely.
you're not too sure about when you go home if you're going to eat. So I'm just thinking, like, how bad is it? How holistic can we get involved in helping the vulnerable?
So I like what you said about when children leave the schools and they go back home and they're going back home to empty pots, empty plates. Yes, there is that. I like to say that the issue of out of school children, vulnerable children, or children lacking access to quality education, it starts first with eradicating poverty, breaking the cycle of poverty. There is that. Because even if as individuals, as organizations, supporters, donors get to come together to pay the school fees of different children to keep them in school, there is the part of when you are happy with how you feel as a person or with the status of your life, you are able to concentrate better at the
Absolutely.
things that give you joy. Even as an adult, you get to work a 9 to 5. If there is a part of your life that you're struggling with that doesn't give you the kind of joy that you expect, you will not be productive at work. You will just be finding yourself getting queries and queries and queries, and you cannot own up to say, it is because I'm struggling in this area of my life, that is why I cannot give 100% on the job. Now, for children, it is entirely different because children from low income homes who cannot afford to study freely, who don't have access to these different things, poverty hits them in so many ways. It makes them very vulnerable to different social vices. It leaves them open to people who would want to traffic children, people who would want to take children in and just give them whatever they think they can give them and get something bigger from them. As a gender advocate, having to tie in the issues of poverty and how it affects children, it is a whole lot. We can tie it into the rising number of children being trafficked. We can tie it into how predators, pedophiles get to abuse children because of what they get to give them. You're telling a child who probably has not had anything to eat an entire day, oh, come to my house later today, I'll be able to give you A, B, C, and D. That child doesn't know whatever ulterior motive that you have, but all they care about is what you are going to give them. So you see that, yes, the work of institutions like a Bethesda Child Support Foundation, they're doing amazing. But we still need the government of the day to actually pick up and do a whole lot. We're talking about the inflation rate. I mean, we don't even know what the numbers are because today we're getting to hear about 33%, and one agency or one individual, a public official is coming to tell us, oh, it's not that, it's 4%, it's this. We don't want to delve into that because it could be a whole lot to unpack, really. But when we get to talk about how to properly build structures in place, let the economy be made in a way that everybody can fend for themselves easily without having to pile on children. Because we're talking about children, yes, a sponsor gets to keep them in school, they're going to school on someone else's payroll. But they go home every day seeing their parents very, very sad about how they cannot provide for their day-to-day needs. And what this does is it opens the children up in a way that they never get to see the interesting or amazing part of their parents, because they've always known their parents to be very uptight, to be angry about the things that are not working. And sometimes these children get piled up as the reason why their parents are not doing any better. Meanwhile, as an adult, you should ensure that you have certain things in place before you're even bringing any child into this world. But we're not about to talk about how we should talk about proper planning your family, contraceptives, and all of that. That's another conversation. But this conversation around poverty and education, there's a whole lot that the government needs to do to come in to help institutions and organizations who are trying to pick up children from the streets. I know different organizations that this is what they do. But again, relying on the support and donations from individuals, corporate organizations to come in. Yes, but now if we get to look at how the economy gets to affect everything and everybody, we can tell that even as individuals, corporate organizations, they're also bearing the brunt of it. Some businesses are collapsing, some people are downsizing their staff strength. Again, the economy. So there is a whole lot that we need to talk about. And ensuring that children really have access to quality education. We get to hear things like, oh, when I was in Nigeria, I wasn't doing so well in my education. But when I moved abroad, I got access to talk to lecturers, teachers who actually saw me for me, who made programs or lectures tailored to my particular need or what we have. We have cases whereby in school here in Nigeria, in a class, we could have, say we have a decent class. Let me use public school, government-owned school as a template here. You go to some schools, you see a class of maybe 110 students or maybe 90 students in a classroom. You don't want to tell me that all of the students learn at the same pace. They have one teacher. That one teacher who probably would come in and just do their own time and just leave. How are we sure that all of these children at the same time are assimilating at the same time? Who sees to the fact that when they go back home, that they're able to take time to reflect on what they have learned when they have parents who are still struggling to fend for them? So we see that we have, it's a hydra-headed issue that we have at hand, really. It is a lot.
How much of technology, digital technology, do you feel that can be used in bridging this gap for low-income students?
Okay, so talking about technology, technology really has done its own bit. I recall there was a time when I think it was the Lagos state government who had a particular program, I think during COVID or so, to help children who had access to technology, children who had smartphones, who had laptops, to be able to learn, connect to teachers from the comfort of their home. But now, talking about technology, I want you to take cognizance of the fact that we have some rural and underserved communities whereby some of these children don't even know how to use a smartphone. Yes, we might get carried away in the bubble and in the illusion that we live in, that, oh, everybody has a phone, everybody knows how to use a phone. But there's some communities where a child doesn't necessarily have access to a laptop until they're probably in tertiary institution or until they're done. I'll give you a real life instance. I once met a core member who stated categorically that she didn't know how to use a laptop. This is a core member. A core member. a person, somebody who has gone through primary, secondary, tertiary institution, and now finding placement in an organization for her 1 year mandatory service, doesn't know how to use a laptop. Now, you would say that, oh, so what did you do during your 4 or 5 years in the institution? What did you learn? But we have to be kind enough to recognize the fact that poverty hits us and affects us in different ways. Poverty affects the way that you think about the world around you and about yourself also. When you know that I don't have the money to chase after these things, let me just do what I can and just be okay in my space. Whether it happens for me how I want it in my dreams and aspiration might just be another conversation. So yes, using technology would definitely help, but it still goes back to funding. It goes back to funding. I mean, just recently, we saw the recent hike in data tariff and how many percent increase, 50% increase that we saw. So if we had a child who was relying on the support of maybe like a donor or a sponsor who was sponsoring this child to be able to learn online, take up online courses and all of that, there has been an increase on the services from these telco companies. So even if you had somebody who was giving you, say, maybe 5,000 naira weekly for your upkeep, the person would need to double this. That is, if this person is kind enough to take into cognizance the different changes that we're experiencing overall in our economy. So even if we say we get to equip the teachers, or teachers have access to the internet, they have laptops, they have gadgets to help them aid learning, what about the children? What about these children? I would like to take, for an example, a project of the Bethesda Child Support Foundation, She Reads, that we currently have ongoing at Ujumale community in Ondo State. You get to see women, see young ladies, 18, 17, who have never been to school, never ever been to school, who cannot even write their own names. And you're wondering, what fair playground will these people have when they go into other communities or when they come into the urban communities where we have children who all their lives have been around gadgets and devices, and maybe at age 8 can do almost everything that an adult can do with a laptop? So you see that the divide is actually very wide, and it takes a lot of funding, a lot of intentionality to do this. We don't want cases whereby, oh, it's International Day of Education, we get to talk about it, we're commemorating, there are reports flying here and there. The president has said this, the governor has said this. Who is keeping tabs on what has been said? Who is keeping tabs on the commitment that has been made? Who is following through to see that these programs really are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're actually impacting the lives who actually need this different support and these programs? So there is a whole lot.
All right. Are there some innovative solutions that have successfully helped with this situation? And how do you think that can be expanded to reach other places?
Okay, so talking about solutions, I would be able to speak particularly to what our organization is doing in ensuring that we get to find people who are committed to education and they want to see it replicated in other children as well. So they get to support every month, every term, or tell us what you're able to do. We can bridge the gap by ensuring that, okay, we have this child attached to you and you get to pay for this child tuition's fee. That one is done. When we have that, yes, it takes a lot of commitment because the person who's been able to pay this term might not necessarily have the means to do that next time. We get to rely on the support of corporate organizations, individuals, to ensure that we have these children stay in school. But also, I know that there's some organizations who get to explore the possibilities of writing grants to other organizations outside of Nigeria to support. So when they get these grants, they get to channel it into the different projects and different programs that they have, ensuring that they have children stay back in school. So we have low cost, low affordable schools where we can just have teachers and students just within a community. You get to teach them what you know that is standard for what we currently have, either in the States based on the curriculum that is made open. And sometimes some teachers even take it upon themselves to ensure that they still get to create time to teach these children more, because we cannot even say, oh, go back home. When you get home, your parents will teach you better or will help you out with your homework, with your assignments, because these parents themselves are not learned. They're not. So we're having to improve by ensuring that we have other skill sets that can help them learn. So we have the regular classroom setting where children are being taught based on curriculums and different subjects that we have existing. We also have the Digital Skill Acquisition Center where children get to learn and pick up on digital skills, because where the world is going right now, a lot of things are being done online. I mean, look at where your studio is, and I am somewhere far away, somewhere here within Nigeria as well, and we're having this conversation. But a child who you've not been able to set up or shown the path on how to go, you don't expect that you just throw them out there and expect them to be able to compete fairly. So there is that. There is also the vocational skill center as well, where children get to learn things day to day, but it still takes funding and support donations from kind-hearted individuals to be able to support these different initiatives. I know that there is another low-cost school where we get to have children pay, I think, 100 naira per day to stay in school. Yes, it might look little, but I like to say that these different donations and stipends that come in here and there, they get to support by taking these children off the street. We don't want to know, yes, we might not be able to measure the long-term impact right now of these different organizations. Speaking for my organization, I can say that in the last 23 to 24 years of existence, we have taken over 10,000 children from primary to secondary school with the support of individuals and corporate organizations. Now, when you look at this, you can tell that there's a level of impact that has been done. So when you look at similar schools and similar models, what they're being run, you can tell that children are being taken off the streets daily due to these different innovations, these different organizations who are dedicated to ensuring that children are educated. We don't want to think about the consequences of leaving those children roaming the streets. We already have a high level of different kind of social vices and crimes being perpetrated by children whose minds are impressionable. We talk about the high level of drug abuse and how children are susceptible to all of these different things. The more we take off these children off the street, you're giving meanings to their life. You're making them understand the difference between right and wrong. You're making them understand what should be and what shouldn't be. We're raising models, we're raising ambassadors who, in the face of crime, in the face of what should not be, they are able to stand their grounds and say, no, I know better and this should not be a thing. So that's what I would say about this particular one.
All right, if you had the power, to change the fortunes of those who are of low income, just to implement a policy that would impact, on these kids, what would it be and why? That the one that would cut across, not just a certain region, but across Nigeria in order to help the vulnerable. What policy would that be and why?
Okay, so first off, let's look at the fact that some states already have government-owned schools. I would like to see a better commitment when it comes to infrastructural development in these different schools, the quality of teachers, the quality of checks and balances in these different schools. Let's not say because it is a government school, anything can pass, anything can happen. And no one is checking. We get to see cases where we know that somebody from the Ministry of Education is coming and all the teachers just go scampering and everybody is suddenly in their classes and they act like everything is fine. But these children cannot speak up because they know that they would rather just have what they have than have nothing at all. There is that. I would also like to see a case where we have intentional effort and support going to organizations that have taken it upon themselves to draw up different innovative models to keep children in school. It will further encourage them in what they have done over the years and also get to see more support being done for them, particularly for the children. I mean, there are communities that we get to call hard to reach communities. At least these NGOs, this different organizations go into these different places to ensure that they pick children up, they bring them together, noting that there are cultural sensitivities as to what one community would want, what the others would not want. The government might not entirely be able to do this. But with collaboration and partnerships with these different NGOs, we will be able to take more children off the street and ensure that more children have access to education. And again, education, quality education is also one of the SDGs. So how are we aiming to beat all of these SDGs and ensuring that we have them with us by 2030? How? If we're not having to intentionally invest in these different things. And talking about education, there's a whole lot that we can tie into it. Talking about zero poverty as SDG 1, a child who is hungry, a child who is coming to school on an empty stomach cannot learn anything. And that goes to how some state governments are having to pick up the, even at federal level, the free school feeding. But again, we have, because corruption is deeply rooted in what we do as a nation in Nigeria, and I'm still hoping that we get to see where we get to, and corruption is totally reading from our fabrics as a nation. But when we say we have school feeding, these children don't know the amounts that have been earmarked for this different initiatives, so they get to eat whatever it is that has been served to them. So you can tie poverty to well-being. These children don't feel good about themselves. You get to hear cases where a child complain about feeling a certain way, and the mother cannot afford to take this child to a proper hospital to get checked, and they just self-diagnose, which is something that we speak heavily against. So there's a need for heavy collaboration, commitment. Let's see how the government can come in to support individuals, support organizations who are running like this, and also better intentionality in better equipping the existing government institutions that we have. I mean, if we want to talk about the tertiary institutions, we have so many tertiary institutions, and every day today we get to see new bills where we say, oh, we're trying to see how the bill for this one will pass second reading for a new institution to be erected or be established in so community. That one we can tie to personal interest, because this person wants to say, oh, I sponsored the bill that brought this institution to my community during my time as a senator or whatever portfolio. But it's not about that. What is the quality of what is being given and instilled in the students who pass through these different institutions? What is the intentionality in ensuring that what we have in our different institutions is up to par with other institutions abroad? We get to see Nigerians still write exams to prove that, oh, yes, we can speak English. We get to see Nigerians having to take different mechanisms to see how our CGPAs here in Nigeria would match up with what we have in other countries. Are we not bothered by all of that? So, I mean, again, there's a whole lot to discuss when we talk about this particular case of education of children from low-income homes and communities, really.
All right. I want to say a very big thank you to you. I mean, it's a great insight that we have received from your thoughts this morning. And of course, with what you are doing, your activities with Bethesda Institution, many thanks for your time and many thanks for your activity. And we hope that
Thank you.
the government and individuals would also find a reason to invest in that space, because it's actually very important. Thank you once again. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Do have a good day, and happy Easter celebration, really.
Happy Easter to you. Esther Alaribe is a programs manager, Bethesda Child Support Foundation, giving us an insight into how education can get to the vulnerable.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.